Hey guys, this is Simon with Trade and Perform Coaching and ToughTrader.com. Wanted to do a quick preview, mostly for the members for tomorrow morning. I've been running late a couple mornings in a row, and I'm pretty much not trading the first hour because the opportunities have been stronger after the first hour. So I want to give everyone a preview so we're not caught flat-footed if I am running behind tomorrow morning in the AM while I take care of some other business outside of the markets. Really quick, number one, we have today stopped. So a couple of interesting things happened today. Number one, from the profile perspective, and I want to duplicate this here real quick. And while it does that, explain. Number one, we stopped one timing to the downside, and I want to talk about that for just a split second. And before I go too far, since I'm going to post this publicly, past performance is not indicative of future results, right? There's substantial risk in trading derivatives. You can lose a lot of money. Don't blow yourselves up, guys. That's all I got to say. It's very easy to lose a lot of money, particularly in this ultra high volatility. Make sure you know what you're doing because they are cleaning house on day traders right now. If you don't have a clear defined edge, you don't trade with discipline and protect your flanks. As simple as I can put it. Here, this is going to take forever, so I want to change this really quick. Just the last couple of days, too many days to load. There we go. This should be pretty quick. And then let's clean everything. 3, 2, 1, taking forever. Price all lines. Yes. Okay. So number one, we stopped one timing to the downside today. It's important to note. Okay. This was able to trade above prior day's high. We haven't been able to do that in going all the way back to, this was the last time we were able to trade above prior day's high. So it's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The reason that's important is it often pretends to look for a change in character. And that change in character does not have to be a reversal necessarily. It can mean that we're simply going to move into a period of time where we're basing. We could simply continue lower, right? So again, I want to do a shortcut for the members so that they know what we're looking for tomorrow. So number one, I want to put in my notes. Between value area high, which was the high of the day, okay, so that's 2707, and value area low, 2645.75, right? I do not expect easy directional moves. I expect chop and balance. If you want to get a good picture of that, just come and look at today's value area, and you can see it just wasn't quite as easy through this area as it was once we got below, right? And once we were trading above, the rotations were easier, but in the middle, more challenging. So remember, when we're above value area high, I expect the opportunity for directional move. When we're below value area low, I expect the opportunity for a move lower. Notice that the volume point of control on ES, I'm going to do this both for ES and NQ, right? So notice the volume point of control and the TPO point of control are separated by a significant distance, right? I would consider this area, while I have it marked off, this location right here, it's the bottom of anomaly, that 2671. I would expect it to be choppy. The volume point of control, I would put more weight on, right? And it's at the top of an anomaly, but because they're separated, neither location in particular is as strong as they normally be when they are sitting right on top of one another. That's not out of mind over markets. That's my personal observation. I'm just more cautious when they're separated. I expect both of these areas to be relatively choppy. I would have just preferred if we could have lined them up in the same area. Notice that even though we rolled all the way down, that volume never shifted, and that was a function that we spent so much time sitting up here this morning, right? So there's a lot in this chart to get repaired. So at any rate, long story short, for ES, number one on the checklist, can I get above value area high? Can I get above value area low? And what we're likely to have when we end one timing, since it doesn't appear that we have the strength to mount a considerable rally without building energy first, I would look for more of a balanced day. Remember, at 11 a.m., we have the Apple Apple News Conference, and that'll at least probably put a choppy period into the trading day, right? Okay, so number two, what am I looking for underneath? This is the last anomaly to be repaired on the profile. I think it's an important location, right? It's also gap fill. I would look for the over-under between 2636.75 and 2643. So specifically, if we open up, right now we're trading at 2656.25. If we trade underneath, establish back above, I would look for the backside test in here, to generate pushes back into these two key areas for long. So this is the area I'm looking for to see if I can get order flow to set me up with a long side trade to push up into 71, 74, and 94, 96, right? And then I'll reevaluate once we're above 07. Holding above 07 with little to no counter rotation would portend well for pushing this to areas higher, right? When we look at areas higher, I'm not going to do a specific trade setup on this, guys. I guess I need to get rid of these arrows here real quick without erasing all the lines. Okay, so once we get above value area high, this is an anomaly. It's not very clear. As a matter of fact, there's nothing that's extremely clear above. The obvious target above is this naked volume point of control and this naked TPO point of control. That's all the way up at essentially 2660 to 2659 to 2662, right? That's the upside target, and it's achievable if we develop a strong short squeeze to the upside. I don't know what's going to fire that off because we've simply been unable to mount it, but we are down a lot, and there's no question in my mind that we have a solid update coming. It just hasn't been able to be achieved yet. So when we do, my first upside target is at 2759 to 2762, and seeing as we went out over here at the end of the day, all the way down here at 2640, that would be at this point over 100-point rotation to the upside. So the natural question comes, well, where's the normal resistance area? And if you'll see, we had balance, the top of balance came to the same location 2 days in a row, right in this area. So I would look for, I'm not going to color that as a zone, but I would make that just a potential target area and exhaustion area. Why? I pitch you from 2640 to 2740. It's 100 points up on ES. Again, hard to see how we get up there, but anything's possible with this condensed and this pushed down as we are. You do have the possibility of getting up. Then the last thing that needs to be repaired, see how this is a poor high? I'm going to mark it off right here. See how this is a poor high at 27, 23, 75? While I'm not looking for that to serve exactly as a resistance point, here, let's give it a different color. Here, we'll color it green again. I am looking for excess to get put in this 26, 27, 23 area. If we get excess, then I would look for a downside test and a retest of this 2707 for possible exhaustion areas. So I know those aren't specific locations, and everyone kind of shrugs their shoulders, but you got to realize levels are getting blown up in this market, right? Sometimes levels work really, really well, particularly in lower volatility environments. When we're trading through the course of the day, I'm trading off of my delta waves and order flow through the course of the day, and I'm looking to get location off of this area, right? So this is simply serving, for those of you who aren't familiar with the way that I trade, this is simply serving as background information for potential targets up and down. Now let's talk about the downside real quick. If we get underneath 2600, I'm just going to label these off. This is, if you want to go look at specific dates, go back to April. That's where all these locations set up. 2575 to 77, 2561.75, this red line, that's an old swing low, a press below and a trap back above. This would be a great place to get a counter or look for order flow to set us up on a long side trade in this location, breaking that swing low and then trapping back in for a push back up. And then finally 2544 and 2535. I'm not bearish. I want everyone to understand that. I'm not bearish. But I know that if we get underneath value area low, we have room to the downside, and I'm more than happy to short in this environment. But I'm also more than happy to get long above value area high. The only area I'm concerned about is when we get these big, wide tracks. So this is what I want to show when we're in this location, right? And I'm going to erase this because, hold on one second here. I'll show this real quick. So if I erase all this out, same profile chart, right? Notice that we had this big, wide day here. And so see how choppy it gets? Because what we're doing here is we're going up to each little anomaly. There's an anomaly here. Another one right here. There's another one right here. Never make it to this one, right? So see how we're chopping around those anomalies back and forth? Notice, until we get into prior day's value, so these are 30-minute bars here, right? So on this day, until we closed back into value, right, the market was pretty straightforward. It opened up and it had a nice, beautiful rotation in, comes in, targets the TPO point of control and the volume point of control, doesn't quite make it there. But notice if you were specifically targeting the TPO with the volume point of control, notice how it starts to get choppy in this area. We reject just underneath it, then it shoots through it, we establish above, and we fire through. I think on this chart, this is why, a good example of why I'm more cautious around the volume point of control and the TPO point of control as being choppy locations. And I'm happier to attempt to establish location below value, right? Because if you'll look, even once we pushed up, pushes down, generated nice rotations. But once we were inside of here, this chopped all the way through. And that's exactly what I expect to happen once we get back into value, or if we open into value. I expect choppy rotations versus, right? So I want to show you this here. See how once we establish, so see how these are small choppy rotations? Look at the following day when we're underneath prior day's value. Look how nice and big and fat all the rotations are, right? This is fantastic. This gets harder because what happens is you're anticipating a big move, but because we're stuck in value, you're having multiple parties compete and you just don't get smooth, nice rotations. It's not always the rule, and it doesn't have to be that way. There's obviously exceptions where we skate straight through a value area. However, this is what I expect inside value. This is what I expect outside of value. And we got much the same today if you'll look under today's area. Actually, I guess today was the exception, wasn't it? And what keyed this off today, let me tell you why we long liquidated through there. And I posted this, guys, on the Slack channel. And this was the first time, if you look the last couple of days, so I'm going to pull this in. See how we've been unable to establish above value area high. The value area is the blue area. Again, for those who aren't familiar, this is the last time we attempted to establish above the value area. And you'll see each time when we're failing, once we establish above, what traders want to happen is that we come in, establish above, and push out. People bet quite a bit of money that that's what the outcome is going to be when you're in this area. So when you attempt to establish above and it fails, that's when you're getting the sweep. So if you look here, we gapped higher, number one. That's a good sign, right? People look for gaps and trade away. So what were the clues here? We gapped higher. The first clue was we closed below the 30-minute bar, right? When we're really strong, we don't get below the 5-minute bar, much less the 30-minute bar of the day. So that was the first clue that there was an issue today. I don't want to turn this into a long video, but that's what it's turning into. Let me keep it short. Next, we test value area high. They attempt to close above. They close below once, close below twice. They close below 3 times. There's little dots there. I'm not sure you can see in the video. Finally, we open that 30-minute section. When it opens, fails to finally make it back above 2675. And everyone that was up here, you now have, when they refer to trap traders, that everyone above there is trapped. And they're all going to hit the punch out button. And no one's invested in holding this, right? And then what you'll notice is once we make it underneath that value area low, right? So if you'll go and look at this, I know that it looks like it was linear, but here, let me show you. Duplicate the chart. And then you go analysis, clean chart. You got a 5-minute bars. And what you're going to see is that when we got underneath here initially, remember this is all value, right? This is value area low. Okay. And what you're going to notice in here is look how much chop once we were back into value. Look how choppy it is in here, right? We're just bouncing underneath value area low and everyone's duking it out. We then finally exhaust everyone, move straight down. Now, what should have happened next is we should have held value area low, but you'll notice they just swept through value area low, established underneath. And what you're going to see is the bars get bigger and bigger as we're pushing down here in rotation size. It finally exhausts. I don't know what was sitting there at 2605, whether it was just we were way over pushed, and you can see we pushed right back into 2645, which was value area low, and then we're trading above at 2657 in Asia. Okay, so again, what am I looking for? I want to see we've stopped one time into the downside. I'm anticipating balance more than directional up. I'm looking for chop inside of value, right? And I'm looking for directional moves both above value and below value. And those directional moves, by the way, just so you're clear, can be up and down in both directions. When we move away from value, you can get big fat rotations back up, and the same is true here. When you move away from value on top, you can get big fat rotations to the downside. Let's cover NQ real quick, and I'm going to go home and get some sleep. Okay, so when we look at NQ quickly, I haven't done the chart for tomorrow. Guys, again, value area high came right in at the top. One of the interesting clues was that that while ES was above yesterday's high, NQ was not. So it still continues to trade to the downside. You can see the last time we've traded above prior day's high was all the way back on the 16th. We failed to do so yet. So you want to note on NQ, if we're trading above yesterday's high, that ends the one timing. Usually what happens on the first day that we end one timing is we establish above and then we fall back into the range. However, we've been down so many days in a row and people are getting more and more confident to the short side. And that's where if you're going to get a monster squeeze, it's going to occur above prior day's high. Just be conscious. If you're trying to short above here, I'm much more comfortable shorting underneath than I am above. Okay, number two, the volume point of control is right here at 68.35 on NQ. There's an anomaly and the volume point of control and the TPO point of control. I expect the 68.10 to 68.37 area to be very choppy. Of note in NQ, there's a huge hole right here between 67.63 and 67.43, and right underneath it's the gap fill. These areas can create considerable chop. Again, it's inside the balance area, so it makes sense that we sit there and try to fill in volume. You might see that we sit here and base, and what I'd be looking for is if we base out, then get above after filling in volume, then the natural target is 68.10, 68.37. I expect a lot of noise there. This isn't such a prominent hole. It needs to be filled in, but it's not horrible. And there's an anomaly right in here below the value area. I'm just going to mark off the whole thing to make it quick. I expect potential rejection out of that area first time in. I'm most interested in setups if we can push above and then I can get the rotation down on the waves. If I can get a wave set up so that I can pick off either the biggest delta in the wave or the bottom of the wave, and that bottom of the wave coincides with, if you're new to the room, this will make no sense. If you've been in the room for a while, if the bottom of the wave coincides above with a test above value area high, I am looking for a big push out to the upside there. I'm not anticipating it. I'm just saying if we get above, that's what I'm looking for. Conversely, to the downside, notice that we did not test this volume point of control and this TPO point of control underneath. We just missed it. It was actually quite cruel if you were targeting that because this is a massive rotation back to the upside, right? But what would be common here, we have good excess on the low now, but if we do get down here and we break, watch for a situation where we slam right into this TPO, slam right back in, trap back in underneath the base, and push right back into the TPO point of control and volume point of control will be your natural target out of there. Also watch for potential traps in this area. If we do trade underneath the delta, remember the over-under. If we melt, right, there's a problem here. Notice see how, and I'm going to look really quick here before I say this. Okay, what I'm going to do while I talk, let me go back here real quick. I want to do something because I didn't expect to be all the way down here and I want to sneak a peek. This will take a minute to download, but it'll be worth the wait. If NQ gets underneath, right, there's two things to be aware of. Someone pointed it out on Twitter, and I forgot about this. In the closing half hour, the 7% and 14% stops are not effective, right? This is going to take a minute to download. Hopefully it's quicker. I just loaded 500 days in there, so it'll take just a sec. The stops, the electronic stops on the market are not effective. So hypothetically, yes, you can have a 20% down day if the market gets rushed in the last half hour. That is very difficult to pull off. It's more of a fantasy, oh, this might happen one day thing than a reality. I wouldn't put too much money into it. And while this is downloading, I want to show you something else on NQ today. So the trade, I think the most important trade was from overnight. When you look at this, let's get out of this. This is a very small range that I trade off of. But when you look, what was clear was we had this massive push. I'm going to erase this here real quick. And what I said first thing in the morning, this is your biggest push on this delta rotation here, was just enormous. It was enormous for two reasons. Not only was it the biggest push, but look at the response we had over it. Once we got above that overnight, so this is the top of that rotation. This is effectively the bottom of that rotation right here. And what I said first thing in the morning was, if we get underneath that rotation today, we shouldn't. Everyone and their brother is going to be betting that that holds. Now I want to show y'all while the other chart loads how this played out, right? See how we come in? See how they try to hold the top of that rotation, pushed in perfectly and gave a beautiful trade back to the upside. Everyone's feeling pretty good here, right? Watch how the demeanor of the market changes. Look how nice the push is off of that. You think, hey, this is a home run, right? We're going to push. I want to show you this. See how we're trying to hold all the way through here? Notice the minute we get underneath 6509, if you don't know how to read order flow, delta, and the waves and the delta rotation, you're doing yourself a massive disservice, because this is what triggers that entire rotation back to the downside. That was a perfectly good short location, and it's a great example of how, while you don't want to shorten the hole, you also want to be cognizant, because I want to show you the other side of this trade here. You want to be cognizant when we get to the bottom of getting above the biggest pushes, and I'm going to highlight two areas that were important here. This is clearly the biggest delta push here, which is roughly right across here. Notice that we couldn't get above it. Once we gave that push down, a lot of people will look for exhaustion at the lows to say, hey, we're going to push up. It's key that you get to understand what that entire structure looks like, and that you need to close above in order to push. And then when you look at the end of the day, see that big push down right there? Here it comes. There it is right there. Okay, so see how each of these, I want to show you this. See how each of these become big and we can't get above them? Here, I'm just going to do a rough job highlighting them. They tried above. This one they tried above. See how they actually tried above? Now watch what happens as soon as we get back below it. Perfect backside test and long liquidation. Now notice this by miles is the biggest push down of the afternoon. I'm going to show you this. Both in thickness, I mean, there's just huge deltas in here, right? Both in thickness and relative to the push. It's the biggest push since the 1 o'clock breakdown, right? It's massive, because I want to show you what can happen when you get above them. Just draw a line above this, okay? This push, you've got to recognize, now becomes your most important place on the chart. Because if you get above that, watch the response to the upside. It just flies. I wasn't here to trade it, but if you see this, you want to put your stops. If you're short, you want to line up your stops right behind it. You do not want to be short if we get above one of these waves. It will crush you to the upside, right? And as you can see, that's continued overnight. We've continued to push right into Asia, okay? So at any rate, long story short, going back to the NQ profile for tomorrow, I now have 500 days loaded. Notice that there's only a naked volume point of control sitting at 64.4175. If we get underneath that thing, see this space where there's actually no naked TPOs points of control? That's 61.92 to 64.41. These spaces become very easy to trade through. And to give you an example of that, what you'll notice here, if I erase this chart, which I'm going to, okay, if you'll notice here, once we got underneath the volume point of control here, the TPO point of control from yesterday, notice that the next target would have been your naked volume point of control and your naked TPO point of control. And while we missed, we probably missed because everyone and their brother was aiming for it. Once we came into it, that even once we got close, right? You can see how look at the space between this location and this location. Look how easy it got for the market to travel. It's because those naked volume points of control and those naked TPO points of control are important. They're more important than the anomalies because they act as magnets up and down. So be aware of it. If we get underneath 64.41, right? So 65.56 and 64.41 are important, but if we get underneath, there's a lot of space underneath. 61.92 to 60.99 becomes your next target below. Get above value, right? Get above value. And 72.20 is your next naked volume point of control that's been untested. That's just your target to the upside. And by the way, that is achievable. If you don't think we can have a 500-point up day, you're fooling yourself, because NQ is way down and has been abused, and people are getting used to shorting it. The shorts, I can tell you from fact, have become massively easy. I would not be shocked, and I'd be very cautious shorting above value area high. I'm comfortable underneath. I'm not comfortable above, because that move is definitely doable. That's all I have to say. So anyways, my name is Simon. Have a good night, guys. I'll be in the morning. you have any questions, email me at tradertough@gmail.com. I'm wiped out and it's late. I'll see y'all tomorrow.